Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Council meeting for the 6th of July 2020. Please ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones you have are switched off. If you are not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. And if you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everyone turn off their cameras and only turn them on again when they are speaking and also introducing themselves whenever they speak. And to ensure the smooth running of the meeting, could members wishing to speak please use the hands up facility, the one we've just been looking at on Teams wherever possible. Please note also that the meeting is currently being webcast live. Thank you. So we'll go to the first pre-item, to be honest. Before we start the meeting proper, I'm intending to have 1 minute silence in memory of the 3 men who were victims of the Forborough Gardens terrorist attack in Reading on Saturday, the 20th of June. So if we can have 1 minute silence starting now. Thank you, everybody. We now start the meeting. We begin with agenda item 15, which is, can I remind you all to switch off your cameras when you're not speaking? Back to item 15, apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have Councillor Pauline Hillier-Simmons, Councillor Angus Ross, and Councillor Wayne Smith.
Thank you. Second item 16, the minutes. Does anyone have any amendments to the minutes? I have one amendment myself, but does anyone out there have any that they want to raise at the moment? Please indicate. No. No one seems to have any amendments. I have one of my own. In minute number 4, it states that one of my charities is called Home First Wokingham. That is an error. It should be Home Start Wokingham. It was just a typo, basically. Can I therefore have members' agreement to the minutes, including my amendment? I will assume that you are in agreement with the minutes unless anyone advises that they disagree.
Sorry, Malcolm, I've been trying to raise my hand. Point 3 on the minutes. That doesn't really reflect what happened there. It wasn't my opinion that block voting and proxy voting contravene the Constitution. It was a fact that block voting and proxy voting contravene the Constitution. Can we have that wording updated? Malcolm, you're on mute.
You mute.
Am I back again? Can you hear me? Right. Yes, Councillor Smith. Those modifications you made will be annotated on the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I move on to item 17 now? Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest anyone wishes to make?
Yeah. Yes, so this is Councillor Maria G, and I have a declaration of interest for item 31.4 because I am a trustee of the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Thank you. That will be noted. Is there anyone else?
Yes, Pauline Jorgensen, I've got a declaration of interest on the Heathrow debate.
Thank you. That'll be
As an
noted.
employee of British Airways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have two declarations of interest. Just Jenny Cheng here. I have one on the Heathrow motion, and but I'm in a position where I can still vote. But I also have one on the item about citizens' advice because I am also a trustee.
Okay. Thank you for advising us of that. Is there anyone else that has a declaration of interest?
Yes, Malcolm. Mayor, it's Andy Croy here. I have to declare that in 31.4, my mother is a voluntary worker at Citizens Advice, and she's the campaigns manager at Citizens Advice. But I can still talk and vote on this motion. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you for notifying us. Is there anyone else that has?
Malcolm, Gary Cowan, I'll a bit like I will on motion 421 as an XBA employee, I will abstain from voting on that item.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cowan. Is there anyone else? No. Fine. So we now move on to agenda item 18, Mayor's announcements. I've been in this role now for just under 3 weeks. We've had a couple of activities, mayoral activities, and there are some in the future. But because we have a very busy agenda tonight, quite a lot to cover, I think I will stop at that point and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the item 19, public question time, for which we have 30 minutes. Supplementaries are allowed in this. Can I just remind you, though, that supplementary questions must relate either to the original question or the response that is given to that question. Also, that executive members' responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. Right, so I'd like to invite, first of all, Anne Daly to ask a question of John Kaiser.
Thank you very much. As councillors may be aware, robust evidence is emerging that the use of bailiffs to collect council tax arrears produces less revenue than other methods, such as signposting residents to local debt advice agencies. Has the council been in contact with other local authorities, for example Basingstoke and Deane and Rushmore, who have signed the council tax protocol in order to understand their experiences and how they have benefited from this signing?
Councillor Kaiser, would you like to answer?
Thank you very much for your question. Basically, the Income Service communicates regularly with other authorities to discuss working practices. Each local authority adopts its own strategy and principle when it comes to collecting council tax arrears. However, there are best practices, and those best practices include things such as deferred payment plans, close working relationships with voluntary and charitable sectors, reviewing customers' affordability to instalment plans, working with the vulnerable and those in financial difficulty to ensure full affordability. Debt advice agencies used where it is seen that a customer has multiple debts. It is a positive that these are independent of the council. Being honest and transparent about the next step in debt recovery and having a customer-centred approach. This practice will hold Woking and Borough in good stead as we come out of COVID. I can confirm we have a robust process and sensitive procedures based on meeting council tax legislation. Woking and Borough Council work with those in arrears to agree affordability and sustainable payment plans, taking into account all personal circumstances. The notices sent about council tax are in plain English and they're clearly explained the collection process. We encourage customers to seek debt advice if they are experiencing financial difficulties. Over the last year, the service manager has introduced surgery days. every 2 months or so, where customers can come and talk to staff from Wokingham Borough Council and Wokingham citizens' advice to prevent unnecessary action being taken. It's about reducing customer stress and anxiety in relationship to the council tax liability, and in some cases acting earlier on in the recovery process to reduce or even mitigate the additional recovery costs. We only ever use enforcement agents as a last resort, and again they are governed by legislation as well as our own internal arrangements which they must adhere to. Where residents are in receipt of council tax reduction, fail to act on notices sent and other methods of collection cannot be taken. So applying deductions from earnings or state benefit is necessary then under those circumstances to consider enforcement agents. If information subsequently comes to light that a resident is vulnerable or is in financial difficulty...
Councillor Kaiser, could you get to the end fairly quickly, please?
I'm just about to, Mr. Mayor. The enforcement agent will always take this into consideration when managing the case. Protection of the vulnerable resident is built into the law on enforcement of debt. What we do need to consider, if we collect less taxes, the bigger impact it will have on our local services and budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Daly, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased to hear, Councillor, that you are keen to reduce customers' stress and anxiety around this, and aware of the importance of early action. Are the Council aware of the link between indebtedness and poor mental health? And if so, what action do they take to address this?
Yes, we are. And obviously, any time that we feel that there's any issue with regards to mental health or the person has a history of mental health, that will be taken fully into consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. The next question we have is from Peter Must. If you'd like to ask that, please. Mr. Must?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes. If you'd like to ask your question, please.
Thank you. In its report to Council, the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee says, with regard to a borough-wide parking management action plan, that it had asked that the Executive Member for Highways and Transport engage with the town and parish councils with regard to the developing plan, and the consultation be reopened to both newly and elected existing members. These actions were actually resolved by the committee at its meeting on 17th June 2019. Can the Executive Member for Highways and Transport say what has been done since then to progress the preparation of a draft action plan with a view to it being submitted to the Executive and then put out for public consultation?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Muston. Nice to see you. The Executive Member for Highways and Transport, i.e. me, asked officers to engage with the town and parish councils with regard to the developing management plan and reopened consultation to both newly elected and existing members, as we were asked to at the scrutiny meeting, between June 19 and December 19. The process of reviewing submissions commenced in February 2020, but has been delayed by the impact of COVID-19 in March 2020. A lot of officers were actually very busy doing other things around COVID at that time. The review of consultation responses has recommenced now, and work to revise the action plan is expected to be complete by the end of July 2020, consideration by the Executive for Highways and Transport. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Must?
I do, if you can hear me.
I can.
Thanks very much. In response to the draft local plan, we, the Wokingham Society, couldn't find any reference to the parking management action plan and recommended that there should be such a reference. I wonder if you, as executive member, would have a look at that to see whether something as important as parking strategy shouldn't be mentioned in the local plan so that developers are aware of what the context is.
Yeah, I'll be pleased to do that, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be from Mike Smith, please, to ask his question of John Halsell.
Good evening. I note from the published agenda for the full meeting on tonight that there are a very large number of agenda items, some of which have not been addressed despite being on the agenda since September 2019. In particular, there are some 10 members' questions, of which 8 submitted by Conservative members of the Council seem to have little useful purpose and will consume time unnecessarily, in my opinion, and which will probably result in none of the later agenda items, such as motions, being debated. Indeed, 5 of these member questions were on the agenda for the previous meeting on June the 16th, but withdrawn as they were presumably deemed unimportant then, and I doubt much has changed in the 3 weeks. As a more specific example, item 27.3 is a question from the Deputy Executive Member for Climate Emergency to the Lead Executive Member for Climate Emergency, asking, how can this council work to continue the huge benefits that the environment has received from lower emissions, presumably during lockdown? Surely, if they both attended their subcommittee meetings and read the various reports and plans prepared for these meetings, there's absolutely no need for such a question at full council. Surely a press release would be better. So my question is, in the interest of ensuring the council can efficiently discharge its duty to provide a public democratic process of debate on motions raised by legitimate members, should agenda items 27.3 to 27.10 inclusive be moved to the end of the agenda tonight, or better yet, be withdrawn?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your kind question. The council meeting agenda has evolved over a very long period and is a little arcane, and I would say predates me. It's interesting the thrust of your question is not consuming time unnecessarily, and yet you ask a question which is very similar to 27.2, and does not the asking of the question similar to 27.2 in duplicate that have the effect of endangering the debate on any motions. I appreciate that you believe that the Conservative members' questions have, in quotes, little useful purpose, but is that not disenfranchising most of the members? You will appreciate that there are 5 motions, 4 of which are Lib Dem motions, which is 2.5 hours of debate for a meeting which should be in total 3 hours. The interests of ensuring the council can efficiently discharge its duty, in quotes, surely is an opportunity for members of the public and councillors to ask questions, to enact whatever business needs enacting, and for the executive and the chairman of committees to update the council on their activities.
Okay, Mr. Smith, do you have a supplementary?
Well, I do. So the obvious supplementary is, so Councillor Halsall has just said that it takes 2.5 hours to debate the 5 motions that are on the agenda. So when can time and a suitable place and venue be made so that these motions can be debated? Otherwise, they're just going to roll on forever.
That is not a matter for me, Mr. Smith. As I said, the agenda predates me, has evolved over a very long time, and is a little arcane. We have a constitutional review working group to look at those questions and to propose to council any variation. Council determines it itself. But thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 20, which is petitions. Does anyone wish to hand in a petition today? No, doesn't seem to be any. So move on now then to agenda item 21, which is the addendum to the Constitution and the protocol for holding virtual meetings. Councillor Chris Smith, I understand that you are going to propose this report. Is that correct?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Do you have a seconder for it?
Yes, I do. Councillor Halsall.
Councillor John Halsall is the seconder, is he?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, Councillor Smith, you can speak for up to 3 minutes on this item, and where you go now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will hopefully not need the full 3 minutes, but what I will say is since COVID-19 and has disrupted the holding of normal meetings, we have pulled together within the Constitutional Review Working Group, alongside the attendance of various leaders and yourself as Mayor, a protocol which we believe will facilitate the smoother running of meetings than we have had kind of so far, but it will also formalise
just a moment,
certain rules.
Councillor Swift, can I just stop you? There's a hand up. Okay, sorry, can you continue? Sorry, formalise some things that mean we do not have to make motions and votes at the start of each meeting to disregard certain rules, and we can now get them embedded in the Constitution. These rules are written hopefully to enable the smoother running, and also they are, whilst not time limited, do have a limit that once we are back meeting in the same room or face to face, these rules will no longer be in force and will be back to the way we normally work. I'll note that the planning committee has their own specific methods of working, which has been driven by the chair and deputy chair of that committee. And therefore, I would just say that I'm willing to answer any questions or concerns that members of this council have, and to have any discussions that are needed. But I'd also just like to respond to Mr. Smith's previous question in my role as chairman of the Constitutional Review Working Group, that we have kind of in the past, since I've been on the committee, looked at the order at which we hold meetings as to whether motions needed to be earlier or later, whether there should be a limit on the number of questions members can ask, etc., etc. And I do find it rather surprising that this is the first meeting for quite a while where there haven't been a load of questions from the opposition in a particular party, yet this is the first time we've had a member of the public bring up the lack of or the number of questions. And I would say that if parties do believe that their motions or particular things are important, they might need to consider what questions they're asking at ward and to executive officers. Again, I will allow questions and pass it back to yourself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Halsall, as the seconder, do you wish to speak now or to reserve your right to speak later?
Reserve my right to speak later, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, I do. I had my hand up. Didn't see here.
Okay. Councillor Ferris, would you like to speak then?
Thank you. You should have received an amendment predominantly dealing with recommendation 3, which is the planning committee activity. And I'd like to say the following. Lib Dem Group is concerned at the current lack of the ability for applicants, objectors, town and parish councils, as well as ward members from speaking at planning committee meetings. We see no reason why this facility could not be reinstated at the earliest opportunity. This is an important feature of our democratic function here at Wokingham. The amendment here tonight, which I say largely deals with recommendation 3, allows for this facility to be returned and from the August Planning Committee. We would have liked the council to have instructed the Planning Committee, but we appreciate the need for the Planning Committee to be confident that such capabilities can be made available and for it to work effectively for the Planning Committee members who would have to work with such a feature. We hope you can support this amendment, which will return an important element of democracy to our planning roles at Wokingham, which had been removed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ways we work at this council. Thank you. Have all members been able to see the amendment?
No, it wasn't up for long enough.
I haven't had any control of that. It should have been sent to you in advance of the meeting.
If it was, I haven't seen it.
It's being displayed right now.
Thank you.
I do have a seconder for the amendment, and that's Councillor Clive Jones.
Just to say the Mayor's having a bit of technical difficulty, so he will be back with you in one moment.
Hopefully you can see me now. Thank you.
You're back.
Several hands went up at the time. I'm afraid I didn't get which hands they were at the time, but I'll get those in a moment and we'll go to the people who put their hands up to speak. Yes, could Councillor Fruin speak first, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, on item 3, the proposed change of protocol removes the voice of our residents for an undetermined period of time. Members will be unable to represent those that have voted for them. Parish councillors will be silenced. And if residents are not allowed to have a voice of any representation at planning, why are we here? There is no doubt in my mind that Shinfield, Arborfield and Swallowfield would have by now had been blessed with cement works and quarries if it had not been for the public voice. Our vision of being relentlessly customer focused is not reflected in stopping public participation in planning. I would request that every time that this is debated in the chamber or virtual chamber, that it's subject to a recorded vote, because I think it's only right and proper that members of the public, members of our communities, know who wants to represent them and who wants to have a non-public voice at these meetings. Thank you.
Simon Weeks, Councillor Simon Weeks, would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to speak against this amendment, and I think those who know me well know that I try and operate the Planning Committee in a very fair and even way, and that is actually the reason why I want to speak against this amendment. The current interim arrangements have been in place since March, and as you will have seen, there's a proposal to review those and, if necessary, amend them at the August Planning Committee meeting, where members will have an opportunity to, as I say, renew or amend these arrangements, review or amend the arrangements. These are interim arrangements. The suggested amendment would potentially disadvantage members of the public who wish to speak in support or object to the planning application, but don't have confident access to video conferencing or even a computer. The current interim arrangements allow all categories of speakers to submit written or emailed contributions, not only during the initial consultation period, but also then again, should the matter come to planning committee. And the current arrangements would allow all categories of speakers to contribute through written input. I would point out that at least one of our adjoining authorities doesn't allow any written or verbal contributions to its planning committee debates, even during normal times. So I cannot support a proposal that would restrict the contribution to only those with access to video conferencing. It should be all or none. So please reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Could Councillor Dolinsky speak next, please? Councillor Dolinsky, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I actually didn't put my hand up to speak, so but I have got something to say. I'm gonna speak against. I'm gonna say I'm against the amendment purely because I don't think it goes far enough. I have read the Local Government Association Probity Planning Guide, and it raises the fundamental moral right for residents to speak at a planning committee. Most, if not all, granted we've got a neighbour that doesn't allow. In fact, it's positively encouraged as a result. And I quote, public confidence is generally enhanced. To be fair, the same guide does refer to the disadvantage in that it can make meetings longer and sometimes harder to manage. And I guess that's where the chair and the vice chair of the planning committee are coming from. Problem I have with that, it does send the wrong message out to our residents. So I do support what Councillor Ferwin said, and therefore I really find it very, very difficult to support this protocol as it stands.
Thank you. Could Rochelle Shepherd-Dubay speak next, please?
Yes, I think. Hello?
Hello, yes?
Yes, Richard's still there. Okay, I think that we should allow either written or oral presentations for this, not just either. So this way we would cover both Simon's objections and also allow the elected officials, either parish or ward or members of the public, to be able to speak with video conferencing if it's available, or if it's not available, they should be able to do it by written submission.
Thank you. Could Stephen Conway speak next, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just really wanted to say, first of all, that I have the greatest respect for Simon as chairman of planning. I think he's a very good chairman of planning, but I think he's completely misinterpreted this amendment. If he actually just looks at the wording of the amendment to item 3, it actually is simply bringing forward the discussion that he's proposing to have in August in order to report back to the council in September. We're proposing simply to bring this forward, have a special meeting in July, so that if the planning committee decides to restore the right of people to speak at the meeting, that could be implemented in August. So this is not quite the dramatic rejection or introduction of inequality that Simon suggests. It's merely an anticipation, a bringing forward of what he, I think, would be happy with. And in response to Richard, he may not think we've gone far enough. I can assure him we've done all that is possible within the Constitution and is reasonable. I mean, we could not bring in changes in time for the planning meeting that's taking place in 2 days' time. That would be unreasonable. We have come forward with a practical solution that I think will help restore public right to speak. And if I may just finish, as a former member of former chair of one of the planning committees that operated when this public speaking was first introduced, there was a great deal of alarm about it then. It all proved to be unnecessary. It has been a great success, and we should restore it as rapidly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Could Councillor Clive Jones speak next, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This awful pandemic is going to change life for as we know it. In fact, it's already changed life for many people, and our heart goes out to everyone who's been affected by it. As a council, we have to do our very best to limit the effects of COVID-19. We have to try to get back to normal where we can, and as soon as we can, and as soon as it's safe to do so. Planning to someone who has or is affected by a planning application can become a very, very big issue. It is therefore very important that residents and councillors who represent the residents can have their say and be listened to by the council planning committee. Liberal Democrats always believe that residents should be listened to. That's why we have proposed this amendment this evening. We believe that the full speaking rights for applicants, objectors, town and parish councillors and ward members should be restored as soon as possible. As Stephen said, we can't do it for a couple of days' time, but we could be doing it soon afterwards. We recognise that this can happen for a few weeks' time. I hope that all councillors will support this and take a further step to restoring democracy at Wokingham Borough Council. I would also like to ask that we have a recorded vote on this item 3. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Could Councillor Carl Doran speak next, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say firstly that I mostly welcome the changes that have been done in the background by the Constitution Review Working Group on this. I get the impression the Chair doesn't agree too much with recommendation 3 either. And the Labour Group can't really agree to recommendation 3 because, you know, it exempts planning committee meetings from the same requirements that other committees will have. And I'm not sure that devolving the decision to the planning committee is a great idea either. I don't quite know why the planning committee is a special case in this regard. The agenda makes the point that the committee can have an emotive nature and that there is a risk of disruption. And certainly, but that's because planning applications are one of the functions of the council that the public's really engaged on. So, you know, I think it's important for transparency and democratic accountability that we continue to enable that engagement in the fullest possible sense in person. The possibility of disruption is real, as it is at usual planning meetings. But in the virtual world we have, there's an even more effective tools to deal with that than there are in the room. I take Councillor Weeks' point about those who may not have access to computers and so on, but we do already have. I've seen certain instances where a councillor hasn't been able to turn up to speak as an objector. Or just as a member making a comment, and their comments have been read out. So we already have a way of doing that for those that need to make that point and don't have access. Basically, the Labour Group will support the Lib Dem amendment, which effectively, just, as Councillor Conway said, just brings forward the decision. But I think it would have been better just for the full council to make a decision and treat all the committees the same and get rid of the Section 6 of the protocol entirely. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Could Gary Cowan speak next, please? And shortly we will be asking Councillor Chris Smith to reply, but Gary Cowan for now, please.
I've got my hand up as well, Mr. Chairman.
I have my hand up too as well.
Yes, yes, I realise. We're going through a list which is changing as we go.
Thank you, Malcolm. I welcome the intent of the amendment, but I cannot support it. Very simply, any public meeting that denies our members, the public and others the right to speak is clearly not democratic. Reading, Bracknell and the Royal Borough allow the public and others to ask questions and participate in the planning meetings. Reading's executive member for planning actually said, there is no substitute for live discussion with the public, and he looks forward to the cut and thrust of public debate returning with even greater vigour and verve. But this is not the case in Woking, where it seems that democratic debate is an alien concept. Conservative-run Wokingham is proposing a change to the constitution that will only allow the planning committee members and its officers to participate in planning meetings, nobody else. If approved, it will deny Wokingham's leader, John Halsall, ex-Prime Minister Theresa May, along with Windsor and Maidenhead Borough Council, the surrounding parish councils and over 70 objectors, the right to speak at a controversial planning application in Wargrave, which is being recommended for approval by Wokingham's planning officers this Friday. It's certainly not democracy, as it denies everybody the democratic right to speak. And I believe that anybody who supports these constitutional changes is anti-resident, anti-parish and town council, and most definitely anti-democracy. But I've expected nothing more from this administration. You can really say goodbye to democracy and all that's good, the good intentions of the Localism Act. And again, like the Lollipop Ladies and Clive Chafer's Highways petition, it'll end up in the long grass. I would say finally, should the council approve the constitutional changes being proposed, I will not, and I'll repeat, I will not attend any future planning meeting until the normal rights of public participation is returned. Our residents deserve this, if nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. Could Imogen Shepherd-Dubay speak next, please?
Hi there. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I am now. Basically, my concern is the interpretation of what the technology here can do. Don't forget that Teams has options for people to dial in by phone. You do not require a computer to attend these meetings. All this amendment is doing is adding. All this is doing is adding additional ways of communicating with the planning committee, and I don't see how someone who would attend a planning committee via using any kind of technology, whether it's phone or Teams, is any more disruptive than somebody physically present in the room, because we'd obviously have to call security or something to throw people out if they were disruptive in that meeting. And plus, from my point of view, as the leader of Wokingham Town Council, if any of my town councillors want to speak on planning applications, they are bound by a code of conduct just the same as any other councillor. I'm afraid I find it rather ridiculous that people are not allowed to speak on these applications, particularly something as emotive as planning applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd-Dubay. Could Councillor Prue-Bray, okay. Councillor Prue-Bray speak next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to make a slightly different point to all the points that have already been made, although I agree with most of them. And that is that I have participated in one of the planning meetings as it is, as a ward member, sending in my 390 words several days in advance. And the thing that is most difficult about that is that you do not get those words read out. Nobody knows you've sent that in. Simon, I hope you're listening to that. It needs to be read out. It takes 3 minutes of time. Residents need to hear what people have said. We've had, if an objector bothers to write a statement of 390 words, that statement shouldn't be just left lying on the table. It should be read out so that everybody knows it's come in and what it says. And that is a minimum. That could be done on Wednesday evening. But we really must get back to the ability to actually speak live to the committee, because what actually happens on the night when you've heard the members update can be completely different to what you send in several days in advance, either as a protester or a ward member or a town and parish councillor. And it's just really not acceptable to go on like this.
Thank you, Councillor Prey. Could I ask Chris Bowring to speak next, please, and after him, if Councillor John Halsall could come along. But Councillor Bowring first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it very strange that it's taken nearly 4 months for any Liberal Democrat councillor or any Labour councillor or any member of the planning committee to come up with a problem on the way we've been running the planning committee during the pandemic. Perhaps I'd like to explain why that is.
Yes, I will take up your call. I'm not on the planning committee, but I have been on the planning committee. Lindsay here. And that is that we have kept a very non-political view for the mass majority of this. And whilst there was a lot of problems to do things, then we would enable, the first thoughts were that we would get the planning committee off the ground. So the initial response has always been, can the planning committee take place? We're now moving into some form of normality, and hopefully it will come back sooner than later. And it is about time, and there is now better understanding of teams. I think we now see how this system works with all its foibles. And we are now in the situation where members of the public can participate. Imogen made a very good point about being able to ring in by phone. And I was going to say you could even set up a loudspeaker phone, which is about 1990s technology. So you don't have to be dependent upon somebody writing a letter. And as Brew has just said, if somebody does send in a letter of the required length, why can that not be read out so people can hear? So I think I'm a bit disappointed with Simon's response. It seems to go against what I've always thought of as an open-minded chair of the planning committee. And I think that it is about time that we brought it in. And this amendment, and I think we're going to have a separate vote on recommendation 3, is that this gives you the chance as the planning committee to look at this. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. We have only a couple of minutes left now. Could we very quickly go to John Halsall for a maximum of about a minute, and then go to Councillor Smith for a right to reply? But Councillor Halsall first, please, briefly.
I think we're certainly missing the point to this. Councillor Duran said, why is planning different? Well, planning is different. It's quasi-judicial. And it has to be completely and utterly a level playing field. What the planning committee at the moment is proposing is leaving things as they are, because it is a level playing field. Everybody can make representations as they are. It is entirely untrue what Councillor Cowan said. Maidenhead haven't had a meeting of any sort throughout the pandemic, and Bracknell do not allow people to speak to planning meetings. So we do. We are very transparent and democratic. We always have been, and we will always continue to be. But until the planning committee comes up with a proposal which it's recommended by the planning committee, I think that we should vote against this amendment and vote in favour of the protocol as it stands. We have another council meeting in 3 weeks' time, so if they've done so, or we can pass that at that time. But until such time as we do, we should be very careful of fooling around with quasi-judicial meetings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Have we lost Malcolm again?
I'm afraid we have lost the mayor. We are just getting him back, and then he will continue the meeting.
Okay.
Right, let's take it from where we were. I think it was Chris Smith due to wrap up. Is that correct, Anne?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to summarise what is allowed at planning at the moment. It is statements of 390 words. So borough, town, proposers, local residents do have that opportunity to make their views known. I will kind of come to a second point, which is the fact that this is an addendum to the Constitution, i.e. the rules we use. And whilst if we pass this today and we have these rules in place, etc., and then we decide to do something different for the August meeting, that could then directly contradict what rules we have, which was why the initial timings were for them to have a meeting in July and then August, and then come up with ideas that would go to see a constitutional review working group for us to vote on in September. What I will say is that if the meeting on Wednesday of the planning committee, and after that meeting they come up with, you know what, this doesn't work, we've got good ideas, I do believe there is sufficient time to get that in for the Thursday meeting on the 23rd of July, if the planning committee do want to do that. And that's kind of why the initial changes were structured in this way. I'm going to say that there's a complaint of people being anti-democratic here and not allowing speaking and not representing residents. I do believe that a rather interesting strategy to represent residents is refusing to go to meetings where you have one of the absolutely key votes on these sorts of things. So I'm very interested there as to how that is viewed to play out. But can I just say that I have brought 2 batches of changes to the Constitution to this committee, to this council this year, both of which have lasted and gone into discussions and much longer than I ever anticipated. And I think this is one of the reasons that we have residents like Mr. Smith, no relation, come and say, we're not getting to debate these things. We have we have discussed for at least 25 minutes on one item on a constitution. I am chair of the Constitutional Review Working Group. I love the Constitution. I view that as a complete and utter waste of time. If we want to do a recorded vote, it's another 5 minutes. If we want to get to these motions, which is so key, we just need to think about what we're doing, what we're saying, and we don't need to comment on everything. I'm sorry to get emotional here and to go on this, but the Constitution can work if people are just a little bit sensible about how much time they spend talking. I realise as a hypocrite myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I think we need to now go to the vote, and we're voting on the amendment to item 21, which is recommendation 3. That's correct, isn't it, Anne?
The amendments were actually recommendations 1 and 3. There were changes to, so we're voting on those.
Thank you very much. And I'll hand over to Susan because a named vote has been asked for. Yep. As I'm acting in the capacity of the mayor at the moment, I will not be voting. Susan, over to you.
I'd like to just verify the procedure on this because it's about items 1 and 3, recommendations 1 and 3.
The amendments, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I'm going to read out all the names and you'll either say for, against or abstention. Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Parry Bath.
Against.
Rachel Bishop Firth. Laura Blumenthal.
Against.
Chris Bowring.
Against.
Shirley Boyd.
For.
Prue Bray,
For.
Rachel Burgess,
For.
Jenny Cheng,
Against.
Ulukren Clark,
Against.
Stephen Conway,
For.
Gary Cowan,
Against.
Andy Croy,
For.
Richard Delinsky,
Against.
Carl Duran,
For.
Lindsay Ferris,
For.
Michael Firmager,
Against.
Paul Fishwick,
For.
Jim Fruin,
Against.
Maria G,
For.
Guy Grandison,
Against.
Charlotte Haytham Taylor,
Against.
John Halsall,
Against.
David Herr,
For.
Emma Hobbs,
Against.
Graham Howe,
Against.
Clive Jones,
For.
Pauline Yorkson,
Against.
John Kaiser,
Against.
Sarah Kerr,
For.
Diane King,
Against.
Abdul Loys,
I've got a question for you before I do. In our planning committee, we shouldn't be voting because there is a conflict of interest. Can you clear with me that whether I can vote or not?
I can vote. Yes, you can vote.
Yeah, okay, then I'm against.
Tahir Meher,
For.
Charles Magetz,
Against.
Adrian Mather,
For.
Ken Miao,
Against.
Andrew Mickleby,
For.
Stuart Monroe,
Against.
Gregor Murray,
Against.
Barry Patman,
Against.
Malcolm Richards,
As the mayor, I abstain.
Angus Ross, Daniel Sargent,
Against.
Imogen Shepherd de Bay,
For.
Rochelle Shepherd de Bay,
For.
Caroline Smith, Chris Smith,
Against.
Wayne Smith, Bill Soane,
Against.
Alison Swaddle,
Against.
Simon Weeks,
Against.
Oliver Whittle.
Against. Over to you, Malcolm. I hand the baton back to the mayor.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. The machine just disappeared. Absolutely no power. Couldn't do anything.
Could I just check with Caroline Smith whether she was able to vote at the time that she had a problem? Because she is here.
Yes, I did vote for. I thought I was heard.
No, she wasn't heard, but that's fine.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, for.
So, right. So the amendments to recommendations 1 and 3 were not agreed, and therefore we go back to debating the original proposed recommendation. Okay, it seems we've run out of time, so we'll have to take the vote on the original promotion, the original recommendation. And that vote will be taken as a block.
No.
No.
Take all 4 recommendations.
Okay, well, yes, we'll take it all 4 in one is what I mean by block. When you answer, you're confirming that you're accepting all of the propositions, including the amendments. Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll read out the names: for, against, or abstention. Keith Baker.
For.
Parry Bath.
For.
I have my hand up for something here. Can we vote separately on section 3 on the third option?
That's a block.
On 3, instead of just voting all together.
We
Just to vote on all 4. Okay.
No, we vote for all four. We've got a position, Rochelle.
Okay, Rachel Bishop Firth. Rochelle Bishop Firth, sorry.
Abstain.
You said abstain.
Where were we? Forgotten.
Yes, I said abstain.
Okay, Laura Blumenthal.
4.
Chris Bowring.
4.
Shirley Boyd. Shirley Boyd.
Against.
Prue Bray.
Abstain.
Rachel Burgess.
Against.
Jenny Cheng.
4.
Ullacrin Clark.
4.
Stephen Conway.
Abstain.
Gary Cowan.
Against.
Andy Croy.
Against.
Richard Dolinsky.
Against.
Carl Duran.
Against.
Lindsay Ferris.
Abstain.
Michael Firmager.
4.
Paul Fishwick.
Abstain.
Jim Fruin.
Against.
Maria G.
Abstain.
Guy Granderson.
4.
Charlotte Haytham Taylor.
4.
John Halsall.
4.
David Hare.
Abstain.
Emma Hobbs.
4.
Graham Howe.
4.
Clive Jones.
Abstain.
Pauline Jorgensen.
4.
John Kaiser.
4.
Sarah Kerr.
Abstain.
Diane King.
4.
Abdul Loys.
4.
Tahir Maher.
Abstain.
Charles Magetz.
4.
Adrian Mather.
Abstain.
Ken Mao.
4.
Andrew Mickleborough.
Abstain.
Stuart Monroe.
4.
Gregor Murray.
4.
Barry Patman.
4.
Malcolm Richards. Angus Ross. Daniel Sargent.
4.
Imogen Shepherd de Bay.
Abstain.
Rochelle Shepherd de Bay.
Abstain.
Caroline Smith.
Abstain.
Chris Smith.
4.
Wayne Smith. Bill Soane.
4.
Alison Swaddle.
4.
Simon Weeks.
4.
Oliver Whittle.
4.
Thank you. I advise that means the recommendations are agreed. Thank you, everybody. These votes are taking a little while. Apologise for the gremlins in the works. We now move on to agenda item 22, which is the annual report from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. I understand, Councillor Swaddle, that you are going to propose this report. Is that correct?
Yes, I am, because Councillor Hellier-Simons, the chairman, has given her apologies.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for it?
I do, Councillor Guy Granderson.
Councillor Guy
Yes,
Granderson
I'm
is
happy
your
to
seconder.
second.
Thank you. So, Councillor Swaddle, can you then speak for up to 3 minutes on this report?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank all of the members of the scrutiny committees, to thank the Democratic Services officers who have performed fantastic job for us. And of course, I'd like to thank all of the residents, town and parish councils and the community groups who give their time, effort and knowledge during the year. Last year, the 2018-19 annual reports highlighted the amount of challenges facing the borough and the need to be more innovative and commercial in our approach. So this is what Overview and Scrutiny has aimed to do this year. We have to make sure that decisions are effective, that they are transparent, and public services always deliver value for money to our Woking Borough Council taxpayers. So throughout the last year, the committee has had regular performance management reports, detailed scrutiny of many key areas. And one of the things I'd like to highlight was that for the first time, the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee had a very detailed look at the proposed medium-term financial plan following its journey through to the Executive and Budget Council meetings. And I think this was very valuable. It's clearly cross-party because our overview and scrutiny process is not supposed to be political. We are all working together for the benefit of our residents. And I do think the exercise added a lot of value to the budget setting process. Our committees, through the members, are doing a good job at challenging the executive members, at challenging our directors. We're holding them to account to make sure that the rationale for all the proposals that impact our council residents, to make sure that what is happening is exactly what our residents would like to see happening. One of the important things that the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee looked at is climate emergency. And I think every member of the council would agree that that is one of our priorities. We're all very concerned to make sure that this council plays its part and we do whatever we can here to contribute to bringing changes in everyday life, in business life, and to improve the environment and ensure that we can become carbon neutral here in Wokingham by 2030. We have set up a task and finish group, and that has met throughout the lockdown period and will be continuing. So just to sum up, I think, the Overview and Scrutiny Committees have been demonstrating their value in the recommendations for improvement to services and policies to enhance the quality of life for all of our residents. And once again, thank you very much to all of the members and the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Sordell. Councillor Grandison, as the seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I might as well just quickly speak now, just to echo what Alison has said, and also to give my own perspective on as the chairman of the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where we had in the last municipal year multiple meetings where we did go and scrutinise the budget setting process in the whole depth. I am pretty convinced that one of the areas that we did not consider was that if a global pandemic was to strike during that budget setting process. But then again, I don't think it was very high on the audit committee's risk register either. There are challenges ahead but the process that we did last year, I think, served us in good stead, and I think will serve us in good stead going forward, looking at this year's committee meetings, both analysing the budget, but also looking at how we have responded to this COVID-19 issue. But I recommend this report to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Grandison. Councillor Swaddle, would you like to have a right of reply at this point?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Malcolm, you're muted.
Yes, I was just reading my home written notes. I'm now intending to go to the vote to note the report. Voting on this will be undertaken using the hands up facility on Teams. which is the one we were checking earlier, for putting hands up when you want to speak. So those members who are able to use the hands, fine. If there is anyone who can't, then they need to let us know. But can we please start now by ensuring that your hands are down? All your hand signals are down. When that has happened, we now ask anyone who wishes to vote for, please use the hands up feature right now. Click hands up if you are for. Okay, so can you now put your hands down? Everybody make sure your hands are down. And we go to the next stage. All those who wish to vote against, please use the hands up feature now.
Andy, I think your hand is stuck up.
Okay, so can you please put your hands down again, please? Now that they're all down, anyone who wishes to abstain, please use the hands up feature now. Okay, so has everybody voted? We're not relying on any more. Thank you.
Excuse me, Malcolm, it's Councillor Maria G here. Can you clarify which way Councillor Housel voted, because he had his hand up in the voting for and the voting against?
Not sure I did,
Hansel?
Maria.
Can you tell us which one?
I had my hand up for and I had my hand down against, so I'm not sure you're right.
There must be some time delay, I think, John, because it was definitely up with the against.
It was, I'm afraid, John.
Old age, I'm afraid.
Old hand?
Okay.
Can we just make sure that all the hands are down before we vote? Before we move on to the next vote? Malcolm, if you can clarify.
Malcolm, you're muted again.
Right, I'm back on the air. Thank you. That report is therefore noted. So we now move on to item 23, the Audit Committee Annual Report for 2019-20. And I understand Councillor Bill Stone will be proposing this. Is that correct, Councillor Stone?
That's right. Yes, thank you very much, Malcolm. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like you to receive the annual report for the Audit Committee for the year 2019-2020. This is the report itself is on pages 91 to 94 in your pack.
Sorry, could I just interrupt you a moment? Do you have a seconder for this?
Oh, sorry, yes, Diane King, Councillor Diane King.
Diane King, thank you. Please continue, Councillor Stone.
Thanks very much. Whilst mentioning Diane King, I'd like to obviously thank Diane King for the work that she's done over the last 12 months as Deputy Chair of the Audit Committee. And again, I'd like to thank Chris Smith for his work that he's done over the past 12 months, along with the committee. This is a new role for me, so for me to actually report on the last 12 months is rather difficult because I was neither a member of the committee, having been mayor, I couldn't be, and it's new chairmanship for me. But all I can say is that I'm very pleased with the experienced committee members that I will have going forward, and we will continue to monitor the workings of the corporate governance, treasury management and risk management of the audit committee. We'll watch that through and through. So if there are any questions, I will attempt to answer them. But in the meantime, most of the report is on pages 91 to 94. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Councillor Diane King, as the seconder, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I would just like to welcome Bill into his new role and actually thank the committee for all their work during the year. I don't really need to say any more than that. I think members can see all the information they need in the report, as Councillor Stone has said. So I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Councillor King. Again, if we go back to Councillor Stone, because it's in the rules, would you like to have a right to reply for this or not?
No, I'm fine. Thanks very much, Malcolm.
Thank you. So I'm now intending to go to the vote to note the report. As before, we'll be using the hands up. So can I please ensure that your hands are down? All the hands are down. I've waited a few seconds. They should go down. Anyone who wishes to vote for the report, please use the hands up feature now. Okay, hands down. We are now going to go for the vote against. Can you please use... We've already got hands down. So if your hands are down, can you now please vote? If you are going to vote against, please use the hands up feature now. Hands up if you are against. Okay, so can you put all the hands down again? It's a bit like school, isn't it? Can you put all the hands down? And now the third and final one of this part. Anyone who wishes to abstain, can you please use the hands up feature right now? Okay, so the report is therefore noted. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 24 now, which is the Standards Committee annual report. And I understand that Councillor John Halsall, you are going to propose this report. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Right. Do you have
Yes,
a
Mr.
seconder?
Mayor.
Do you have a seconder for it, Councillor Halsall?
I should think it's John Kaiser.
Thank you. The proposer is Councillor Halsall. Would you like to speak now, please?
Well, given the interests of time, I think I'll just present the report as it is, as read. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we go to Councillor Kaiser. You have the right to speak now or reserve it, or do you wish to speak now?
I'd like to speak now, if possible, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have much to say. I believe the Standard Committee is the third non-political committee we're discussing here tonight, and long may it remain so. What we do not want to do is we don't want to see the Standards Committee as a way of scoring points or settling political arguments, and it's very important any allegations made against any councillor is dealt with extremely quickly, because I know the pressure that it can put councillors under. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? No one? Fine. So we go back to Councillor Kaiser again. You sorry, Councillor Halsall, you'd like to have a right to reply if you wish.
Well, I would like just to reiterate what John said. Councillor Kaiser said that the Standards Committee really shouldn't be used for internal politics. It should be treated with respect, and that's what we've tried to do, and I think it is. And I recommend the report to the council.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. So we now intended to go to the vote, and once again we'll be using the hands up facility. So can you please make sure all your hands are down? Should be long enough. Now, if you want to vote for, can you please put the hands up now if you are for? Okay. So put hands down now, please. Second one, if you wish to vote against. Sorry, I'm a bit too quick here. Okay, can you put the hands down now? Those are all the fours. So now that all the hands are down, we're going to do the vote against. Anyone who wishes to vote against, please use the hands up feature now. Okay, I think that's long enough. So I can announce that the report is therefore noted. Thank you, everybody, on that. We now go to another report. This is item 25 on the agenda, Wokingham Borough Wellbeing Board Annual Report. And this is to be proposed, it says, by Councillor Charles Margits. Councillor Margits. Good evening.
And I believe John Halsall is going to second this for me.
Is that correct?
Indeed.
Just briefly, I'm going to keep this very brief, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to take a moment to thank all the officers, health professionals, members of the voluntary sector, and to Councillors Halsall and David Hare for their contributions to the Health and Wellbeing Board this year. The main work of the year and the future priorities are detailed in the report. The focus of the Health and Wellbeing Board is going to change in the short run because the next stage of the local fight against COVID is track and trace. WBC has the responsibility to run track and trace locally, and this will be done via a subgroup of the Health and Wellbeing Board, which meets for the first time later this week. The subgroup will be chaired by John Halsall and will include myself, David Hare, senior officers and various people from Public Health England and the NHS. It will meet initially on a 2-weekly basis, but will meet more frequently in the event of a local outbreak to coordinate the response. So I just wanted to bring members up to date on that and otherwise to obviously recommend the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Margits. Councillor Halsall, do you wish to speak now or reserve to speak later?
I'll reserve to speak later, sir.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this? No one? Right. So, Councillor Halsall, you therefore reserve the right to speak. So, do you have anything to say now?
Only to support Charles in that the Health and Wellbeing Board and the work that was done before the emergency laid the grounds for an intimate working of the parties. And I'm happy to say that with that and the subcommittee, which is now called WHIP, which is the GPs and CCGs, when we got to the emergency, everybody knew each other and was working together. And we hope that from this, we can build it to a community-led service looking to the two issues that we're keen to deal with, which is loneliness and keep getting people moving. And trying by that means to reduce the pressure on GPs. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor.
Council. Although there were no other speakers, Councillor Margaret, you do have a right to reply if you wish to use it.
I'm happy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we then go on to the vote. Yet again, we will be using the hands up facility here. So can you all make sure that your hands are down to start with? All hands are down. Okay. Anyone who wishes to vote for this report, please use the hands up feature now. Okay. Put your hands down again. And this time we're going to do the other side, against. So if your hands are down and you want to vote against, use the hands up feature now. Sorry? We'll do that last vote again. If your hands are all down and you wish to vote against, use the hands up feature now. Right, put the hands down again, please. Right, the third one. If you wish to abstain from the vote for or against, we now have the opportunity for you to abstain. If you want to abstain, use the hands up feature now. Okay, right, so the report is therefore noted. We now move on to agenda item 26, which are reports from members appointed to outside bodies. Again, this report is to be proposed by Councillor John Halsall. Is that your understanding, Council? You will be?
Yes, I'm proposing it.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Indeed, John Kaiser.
Yes, thank you. So Councillor Kaiser is the seconder on this. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? No, no hands up. So do you wish to speak, Councillor Kaiser, even though no one else has spoken? Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, I can speak now, Mr. Mayor. All I'd like to say is that these outside bodies are very important, and it's very important that all councillors appointed to them take full part and report back on an annual basis. But that's really all I've got to say.
Thank you. Councillor Halsall, though there weren't any other speakers, it's back to you again. You have the right to reply if you wish to.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to thank all our members for all the contribution they make on the outside bodies, which are very important. As we go through the emergency, it's clear that our work with our partners is more and more important, and those representatives have to make sure that those bodies are bound into the council. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I recommend this report to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. So now we go around the vote using the hands up process again. Can everybody make sure their hands are down to start with? That should be enough time. Now, if you wish to vote for, can you please use the hands up feature now? Okay, hope that's long enough. Put the hands down now, please. Are they all down? So if you want to vote against this report, please use the hands up feature now. Sorry, they're not down yet. I keep seeing hands going up and down on the screen. We'll do that one again. can you put all the hands down, please? There's still hands sticking up in the air. Can they all go down, please? Right. So if you wish to vote against, please use the hands up feature now. Right, that should be long enough. Can you all put your hands down again, please? All of them. I can still see hands sticking up on the screen. Yes, can you take them down? Thank you. If you wish to abstain, please use the hands up feature now. Okay, should be long enough. So the report is therefore noted. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 27, which is member question time. We have 30 minutes for this. Supplementaries are allowed. But can I please remind you that executive members, the responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes. And members, that supplementary questions must also be no longer than 1 minute, and these will be timed. So I would like to invite Councillor Gary Cowan to ask his question, please.
Oh, thank you, Malcolm. I'd like to ask the question standing in my name.
Just a moment, please. So just checking whether we needed to read it out so that people watching would have the question rather than just an answer. But okay, and Councillor Jorgensen, Pauline Jorgensen, should be answering that one.
Thank you for your question, Gary. To answer your question, discussions have been undertaken with Reading buses around the diversion of the Lion 4 X4 into the Park and Ride site. All Lion 4 X4s are successfully diverted into the site at pre-COVID-19 frequencies, and assuming a normal week with no bank holidays, this would provide 739 buses, of which 372 would be Reading bound and 367 would be Bracknell bound.
Thank you. You don't have a supplementary at all?
Yes. Park and Ride has many benefits, but every park and ride in Woking Borough incurs financial costs which our local residents have to pay. So really, when you look at the existing structures, Wokingham, Woodley and Lower Earley get a very poor service out of the park and ride services we've got. So my question really is, could more effort be made to try and get the park and ride routes to come into Wokingham, Woodley and Earley so to benefit our residents and not just those in Bracknell and Wokingham? Thank you.
I'm a bit confused with that point, Gary, in that Earley and Woodley and Winnish indeed are served by the Park and Ride at Winnish Triangle, which serves Earley quite well, and the Park and Ride at the River Thames by the Broken Brow, which obviously will serve sort of that end of Woodley as well. So although they're not actually in Woodley and Earley, they're pretty blooming close to them. So there are Park and Ride services that do service both towns, and I'm always happy to look at any suggestions you can make as to how we improve them without spending a lot of ratepayers' money on it.
I understand, and thanks again, Pauline.
Thank you, councillors. Would Councillor Prue-Bray like to ask her question, please, Councillor Helfer?
Thank you, Malcolm, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I won't read the whole question out, but it's a question about how there isn't enough time at council meetings to reach the end of the agenda. And the question is for Councillor Halsall, what will the Conservatives do at this and future meetings to try and ensure we do reach the end of the agenda?
Thank you.
Prue, thank you for your question, particularly tonight, and particularly now that it's 9:06 in the council meeting, 1.5 hours in. As you know, the Constitution Review Working Group considers all requests from members to ensure the council meeting runs effectively and efficiently. This is including examining the time available for each item at the council meeting to complete the business of the meeting. The Constitution allows for council meetings to be extended for an additional 30 minutes, meaning that the meeting can run for a maximum of 3.5 hours. In addition, the council has agreed to introduce an additional meeting in the municipal year, recognise the interests that both the public and all members have in work of the council. In short, it can be a difficult balance to strike, ensuring adequate time for public and member participation, holding the executive to account, full council taking informed key decisions on important items that affect our community, and leaving time for the full debate of motions. By means of an example and not criticism, I note that since your question was submitted, your leader has submitted an urgent question on a very important subject, but this will necessarily take time away that otherwise could have been allocated to the debate on motions. Furthermore, there are 5 motions, the first 4 of which are by the Lib Dems, which in total would take 2.5 hours to complete if they were on their own without any other business. Conservatives have no control of what parties seek to conclude in the council meetings and therefore cannot ensure that we reach the end of the meeting or the agenda.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor
Oh,
Bright?
I certainly do, yes. I think, John, you are perhaps deliberately missing the point. The fact that we've already had more than one suggestion this evening that in order to get through the business of the council meeting, we lose our opportunities to ask questions, that it's been suggested that it's a waste of time to debate whether people can be represented democratically at the planning committee. And you're objecting to having 4 motions, not that they were submitted for this meeting, but were submitted as long ago as September, and we've managed not to get to them. All that indicates we have got a serious problem. So we're not getting through all the things that we need to do as a council. So will you commit to at least genuinely having a cross-party discussion on what we can do to improve this?
Genuinely, Prue, I've been trying to do that for the last 13 months.
Right. Thank you, councillors. Next question, please, is Councillor Laura Blumenthal to ask her question of Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we're emerging from lockdown, how can this council work to continue the huge benefits that the environment has received from lower carbon emissions?
Thank you for your question, Laura. The response to the COVID-19 outbreak has provided evidence that in modern society we can do things differently. Before the start of the pandemic, about 1.7 million people in the UK regularly worked from home. That's according to the Office of National Statistics. That represents about 2.5% of the UK population. The lockdown caused an instant shift in working habits and methods. An estimated 20 million people now regularly work from home. That's equivalent to about 30% of the UK population. In Wokingham, the lockdown resulted in a significant reduction in transport. Workplace commuting went down by 54% during April alone, having direct effect on congestion and consequently on improving air quality and reducing our carbon emissions. As we move into the recovery phase, there is a great opportunity to help shape how we move forward in the medium and long term. Within the council, we're working towards understanding the impacts on employees from extended home working experience. We're asking our employees to share their experiences and tell us what they have learned from the last few months and how we can use this learning to shape the work environment for the future. There are positive things we've learned about how we work and engage with each other, and we have the opportunity to shape a more flexible approach to the way the council work and serve our customers. Until now, officers have been allowed for flexible working, as we recognise there are many advantages such as time and money saved on commuting and the positive impact on the environment. However, we also have the right conditions needed to be in place for it to succeed. In addition, specific working groups have been tasked with assessing the effects of lockdown, collecting evidence and providing recommendations that will allow us to take evidence-based decision-making relating to our staff and accommodating strategies. More broadly, the council has been engaging with businesses to understand their working practice and engage them in considering the new ways of working in their recovery plans. We're working towards promoting lift share schemes through My Journey to support business development, bespoke travel policies as well as encouraging them to increase the uptake in cycling and promoting the Love to Ride scheme.
Councillor Murray, can I ask you to get to the end of your...
I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blumenthal, do you have a supplementary question?
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. So next one, Councillor Pauline Hellier-Simons was unable to attend the meeting, so she will receive a written answer to her question. We then move down to the next one, which is Councillor Graham Howe to ask his question of Councillor Halsall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the height of the emergency, it was understandable normal meetings of the council and committees were suspended. In fact, they would not have been permitted within the regulations. During the shutdown, a number of things were not done and other functions operated differently to pre-COVID. So the question is, what has been learned about doing things differently, and what has the council learned to improve constitutional decision-making and scrutiny?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Howe. I recognise the importance of this constitutional decision-making and proper scrutiny. Democracy can only function with transparency and scrutiny. Face-to-face meetings were suspended nationally during the emergency and regulations permitting an alternative were awaited. I'm pleased to announce that since the regulations were enacted in early April, allowing councils to hold virtual meetings, several decision-making meetings have already taken place. This has included, for example, 2 executive meetings, 2 planning committee meetings, an audit committee meeting, and an annual council meeting. These meetings were held all virtually and webcast live, allowing anyone to view them. We are tonight holding our second virtual council meeting, which is an additional meeting to consider some of the items which had been due to be discussed at the postponed March meeting. It would also be possible for the public and members to submit questions to this and other applicable committee meetings. Regarding scrutiny, the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee met on the 24th June, together with its subcommittees, and are carrying out significant scrutiny relating to council response to COVID-19, as well as the ongoing activities of recovery. This will be a key means of ensuring the council is well prepared should there be a second wave. In the future, all the council and its other decision-making committees will be held in accordance with the timetable of meetings, which was agreed by council in January 2020. As stated previously, it is intention to webcast live all public meetings that are held virtually, ensuring that residents can access and participate in the council's democratic process. While the emergency exists, we shall have to hold meetings virtually or hybrid. Members and officers have now become used to many of the benefits of virtual meetings and overcome the concerns. It is quite possible the CRWG will consider proposing to council moving to virtual meetings in some cases, even when the emergency has ended.
Councillor Halsall, could we ask you to get to the end of your report quickly, please?
Indeed. It is a credit to our officers and our democratic services who have sought to overcome the issues involved so the meetings can be held and are continuously seeking to improve the functioning of them. As members, we need to examine what we want out of these meetings and ensure that we put into operation procedures democratically which will facilitate them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Howe?
I believe our leader has given us a comprehensive answer, so no thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Firminger, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Charlotte Haytham-Taylor, please?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Mayor. My question is, what are your plans for regenerating Wokingham Town Centre after the coronavirus?
Thank you, Councillor Firminger. Making sure that our town centres can continue to thrive in a post-COVID world is incredibly important to this council. And this work will now be supported by the council's new business and economic recovery group. Pre-COVID, Wokingham Town Centre was already seeing a real increase in the popularity. Its footfall was up and the regeneration was nearing completion. Residents and visitors were attracted by the great new businesses and facilities like the Everyman Cinema, the new square at Peach Place, and the lovely new park and destination play area at Elmsfield. As with all town centres, the initial lockdown effectively closed all but essential businesses. However, in recent weeks, we've already seen the signs of some recovery in Wokingham. People are returning to the town centres as the lockdown relaxes and more businesses open. Whilst it's early days, we know local people want to support their local town and shop local. Strategically, we've been offering support to retailers throughout the restrictions, with over £35 million worth of support giving out to local businesses since March. This includes business rate relief, the original small business and hospitality and retail sector grants, and the latest discretionary grant, which was focused on supporting some of the hardest hit small businesses, such as market traders, who are so important to some of our town centres. We've also continued working closely with other important groups, such as the Thames Valley LEP, the Federation of Small Businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, to look at what wider resources are available to support businesses and make sure that they can easily access them. Focusing on Wokingham Town Centre, the council is working very closely with the Town Council and Love Wokingham to identify some of the local businesses' main concerns and their ideas and their thoughts. We strongly feel that if recovery is to be a success, plans need to be developed in partnership with businesses who already have their part to play in making sure that the town is a safe place to shop over the next few months. A range of actions have been put in place to help our centres recover, including targeted marketing and awareness campaigns to keep people updated about what's on offer in the town centre.
Councillor Haytham-Taylor, could I ask you to draw close shortly, please?
Absolutely, thank you, yes. Whilst we know there's still a lot of work to be done and there's likely to be many changes over the coming months, we believe that the regeneration of Wokingham has created the ideal conditions for the town centre to continue to be resilient and become a success that we know it can be.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Firminger?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank the executive member for a very positive answer there, which is fantastic. I just really want to ask, my supplementary is, the Woking Regeneration is delivering new homes too. I just really wondered if you could tell me what the status is of these. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Firminger. We're delivering in excess of 200 new homes as part of the regeneration project, and 22 apartments in Peach Place have already been let to key workers, providing much needed houses for these essential workers, but also adding vibrancy to the town centre. Now that estate agents have reopened, I'm happy to report that there's been a really positive level of interest in our houses and apartments above the retail areas in Elmsfield via our estate agents, David Cliff. Viewings are underway in line with social distancing protocols, and we're starting to receive offers as well. Across the park also, David Wilson Homes have reopened their site as well following the lockdown, and they're continuing to build out. They continue to market the scheme during lockdown, and they've also had a good level of interest, and it's also continued to pick up since the restrictions have been eased. We're also planning to build a further 55 apartments in the town as part of Carnival Rule Phase 2. The planning consent has been agreed and construction will start soon, and the contract will be tendered later on this year.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Daniel Sargent, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Pauline Jorgensen?
Yes, thank you. Were we able to use the lockdown productively in improving our roads?
Thank you very much for your question, Daniel. Yeah, the lockdown enabled us to bring forward 17 difficult resurfacing schemes for delivery in April, May and June 2020, including some of the busiest sites in the borough, such as the Showcase Roundabout, Pound Lane Roundabout on the A4 and the Fincham Road Roundabout outside the Ford Garage and Molly Millers Lane. Initially, these schemes had been scheduled to start in August 2020, and by bringing them forward, we've been able to take advantage of much reduced levels of traffic and minimise the disruption to residents. In addition, we also managed to save some money as we were able to undertake more of the work during the daytime, which of course is cheaper. Alongside these schemes, we also started work on our annual surface treatment programmes. We completed all the planned surface dressing programmes on the 9th of June 2020. The micro asphalt programme is still ongoing. We're of course on course to have it mostly completed by the end of June, subject to weather conditions.
Do you have a supplement at all, Councillor Sargent?
No, in the interest of time, no, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Diane King, could you ask your question, please, of Councillor Charles Haytham-Taylor? Councillor King? I note you've got your hand up, Councillor King. Would you like to ask your question of Councillor Haytham-Taylor?
Sorry, forgot to take my put my microphone on. My question, I think Councillor Haytham-Taylor has answered some of my question in her answer to Michael Firminger, but if she would like to add anything else about what we are doing to help the towns and villages to recover from the emergency, that would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor King. As I set out in my earlier answer, there's a huge amount of work that's been going on in our local centres to help them recover from the impact of COVID-19. We're making sure that our businesses, our local businesses, are able to access the support they need, whether it is the £35 million worth of financial grants that we've already given out, or access to advice and information, or retailer support packs that have been being distributed as well to help them with the reopening as we go forward. There's lots on offer that the council has provided. We're also looking at a range of wider support for our centres, such as temporary changes to the way that spaces are managed and laid out. We've made a lot of those changes already, but we'll continue to keep those under review and also offer lots more of marketing support as well. Whilst the initial focus has been on reopening, the largest shopping areas, particularly Woking Town Centre, Woodley and Twyford safely, the lessons learned in making those centres safe spaces for shoppers and for workers, as well as the materials generated and the information shared, it will be just as important for our other areas, such as the smaller villages and centres as well. Over the coming period, we'll continue to work closely with our towns and parishes, as well as our local groups, our businesses, the associations and communities, to help support them, not only in recovering from the impact of COVID-19, but also continue to deliver on our shared long-term vision for making Woking Borough a great place to live, learn, work and grow, as well as a great place to do business.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor King?
No, but I would just like to thank Charlotte for all the work she's been doing, and also I think that information is really valuable to our residents, so thank you for telling them tonight.
Thank you, councillors. Now, Councillor Jenny Cheng, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Charles Margetts?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As the Woking Borough Council representative of the Royal Berkshire Hospital Council of Governors for the last 2 years, I would welcome your views on how we work together during the emergency and how we can build on this relationship in the future.
Thank you. We continue to work operationally closely with the Royal Berkshire Hospital colleagues there on a daily basis, 7 days a week, facilitating discharges within the framework of the hospital discharge requirements which were issued by national government in March this year. This has resulted in quicker discharges to ensure there is plenty of capacity in the hospital. The working relationship between all system partners, health and social care, is positive and solution focused. We have a weekly system meeting which is attended by the 3 Berkshire West local authorities, the Royal Berks Hospital, Berkshire Healthcare Foundation and the CCG. The purpose of this meeting is to ensure all partners are fully briefed on matters of mutual interest, including capacity constraints, challenges which organisations are facing, and agree to work together to support them. The system is currently working together to further develop hospital discharge pathways to ensure we learn the lessons and embed the positives from our response to COVID-19 into normal business, and that everybody continues to comply with statutory requirements, and that, most importantly, patients are discharged safely. Health Watch is supporting us in this work by obtaining views from patients, so we want what matters to them most when being discharged from hospital. On a more strategic level, we're fully engaged in the development of the Berkshire West ICP, Urgent and Emergency Care Strategy, which has been identified as a key ICP priority for 2021. This aims to deliver improved outcomes for patients, relieve pressure on our services and create a more sustainable sector going forwards.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Chang?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abdul Lois, would you like to ask your question also of Councillor Margetts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to all. My question to Charles, could you please update the council for the situation in care homes?
Thank you. We fully appreciate that the whole care home sector is being under immense pressure, and the exceptional jobs that the care homes and the health and social care system have done reach to meet the current challenge. It would have not been possible to respond in the way we have without the full support of our partners, especially those in care homes. We'd like to thank all care home staff for the immense effort they put in to keep people supported. Locally, we've established a protocol and task force with health and social care colleagues. This means infection control teams. This process works proactively with our care homes to prevent the spread of COVID-19, assess and support their readiness to take and manage positive cases, and ensure they receive all the support they need. It also supports all the council's safeguarding functions. It's worth noting that as of Friday, the 26th of June, and indeed as of today, all care homes within the borough are COVID-free. It's important to acknowledge, however, that all that suspected and confirmed cases of COVID will continue to emerge. The staffing situation in care homes is reported as stable. Symptomatic staff continue to be able to access testing via WBC, and asymptomatic staff can access testing via the national portal. Care homes have utilised the additional bank of staff provided by WBC, but this has tailed off as the position has stabilised. The task force continues to work with home managers around guidance and advice in terms of how to deal with COVID-19. Many older people's homes have now been able to access whole system testing. Homes are reporting feeling well supported and they feel prepared for the ongoing challenges. Adult social care has been working with local care homes. Work has included an improved funding deal for care homes we contract with, prepayments to support with cash flow, plus ability to apply for temporary funding, help with PPE. Over 390,000 pieces of PPE have been provided, regular advice and guidance, including financial sustainability and infection control, 400 phone calls to support care homes, testing for staff with symptoms, 250 staff tested, offer of access
Could you
to
come
staff.
to a close shortly, please, Councillor Wright?
Offer of access to staff and a spiritual and emotional support via the community hub. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Loyce?
No, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the extensive answers.
Thank you.
Councillor Shirley Boyd, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Barr?
Yes, I would. Sorry, I can't get my picture up for some reason. Yes, my question is, I note from Councillor Miles' report on the Wokingham Sports Sponsorship Fund that this particular fund helps to provide equipment, kit, travel expenses for youngsters who are exceptional at a particular sport. As a member of the Arts and Culture Working Group, I would like to ask whether the council will consider a similar fund for young people who are exceptionally talented in the arts.
It's the Invisible Man.
Did you hear the question?
My sincere apologies, Mr. Mayor.
And Ken's on mute.
Councillor Boyd, thank you. That's a very nice question.
Harry.
As you know, I'm also on the Arts and Culture Working Group, and you'll know that I'm hugely committed to promoting and developing cultural activities throughout the borough, including the widespread involvement and engagement with young people. With regards to funding in a similar manner to the sports sponsorship fund, I think it is perhaps less straightforward to be able to define exceptional talent in an environment that isn't driven in the same way by competition with very clear performance parameters. I'm also aware that there may be other funding sources available. For example, I know that the Berkshire Maestros offer fee discounts and have sponsor a child fund for those struggling with affordability of lessons on instruments. As you know, the local authority is facing significant financial constraints in these challenging times, and this provides a very difficult context within which to commit to new areas of expenditure. However, I'm more than happy to explore further how we can collectively support talented young people in the cultural sector through the Arts and Culture Working Group and in taking forward the draft Arts and Culture Strategy.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, only insofar as yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only insofar as there are actually a good many other ways for young and talented sports people to get funding from the Sports Lottery Fund and various other things. And for young people who are very talented in the arts, say perhaps going on to the Royal Ballet School or the Guildhall School of Music, I know for a fact that the cost of music instruments and travel, etc. And I would just implore the council to consider giving equality to the arts.
Thank you.
I would totally agree
brief
with
reply.
that.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would totally agree with that, and through the Arts and Culture Working Group, we will sit down and work together and find new ways forward to funding these particular young people.
Yeah,
I'm totally supportive of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. And finally, on the questions, Councillor Lindsay Ferris, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Charles Margetts, please?
Thank you. My urgent question, I won't read it all out, is regarding the information that the council has received on the COVID-19 numbers of people who've caught it in our borough and who have sadly passed away. People may have read in the papers and on the television about information having Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. Could you confirm whether the council has received full information, please?
Thank you. Yes, in answer to your question, first of all, to deal with the testing side of it, testing, as I think everyone knows, was not widespread at the beginning of the pandemic. Testing is now basically available to everyone who needs it. And to define this, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 gives us information about WBC positive cases through antibody testing. Pillar 1 is swab testing carried out by Public Health England and NHS labs. This is primarily hospital patients and key workers. Some of our care homes are tested in these labs. Pillar 2 is swab testing done by commercial labs on behalf of the national government. This is testing for the wider population through the NHS or gov.uk websites. This includes our care homes who are tested using the online portal. Pillar 2 started later than Pillar 1 and has been gradually increasing. Up to the 2nd of July, there have been 2,947,392 tests in Pillar 1, 36%, 5,130,686 tests in Pillar 2, 64%. Up till the 1st of July, WBC had been reporting Pillar 1 data, with 485 cases reported. There have been no Pillar 1 cases in Wokingham since the 14th of June. Pillar 2 was made available to local authorities on Friday of last week and the general public. Somehow it found its way into the Daily Mail before that. Public Health England are now able to combine the data sets with a new methodology that enables them to remove duplicates and provide accurate data. The confirmed cases for Wokingham in total are Pillar 1, 458, which has been reported by WBC, Pillar 2, 126. Total cases in Wokingham, 584. As a comparison, the infection rate in Wokingham Borough, 348 per 100,000. The infection rate in England, the average 436 per 100,000. So, as a result of Pillar 2 data became available, it emerged the number of cases in Wokingham Borough did increase, with 1 case in the week June the 15th to 21st and 5 in the week after. This increased the weekly rate from 0.6 to 3. Even though WBC did not have access to...
Mr. Margetts, could you get to the end of your report briefly, please?
Sure, okay, I'll skip the next bit. I'll just go on to the key bit at the end, which was about the information on death data. This hasn't changed. This is reported by the Office of National Statistics. Week of the 17th of May, 130 COVID-19 deaths. 19th of June, 147 COVID-19 related deaths in Wokingham.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, a brief supplementary, Councillor Ferris?
I just say thank you for your response. There was a press release on Friday, which I think effectively answered my question that I asked tonight, which I submitted on Tuesday. And I think that the public need to be aware that there is some significant variance in certain parts of the country with regarding the numbers cases reported to the council, because throughout we had been given pillar 1, but now we are finding that pillar 2, which is the greater size of one, is now coming on stream. Was that information kept back, or was it as a result of pressure which has been now in the public domain for about a week?
Briefly, Councillor Marget, please.
Yeah, briefly, yeah, I agree with you fully. I think it's deeply frustrating to me, all the officers, that this information just lands on us without warning. It was kept back basically because it wasn't ready, is what we're being told. We think this is wrong. We think this is very poor. We think if councils are being asked to plan for COVID-19 and the reaction locally, that they should have accurate, timely and honest information, so that not only can they plan, but they can brief the public about the real situation. So I agree with you fully.
Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the end of the members' question time. We now move on to agenda item 28, which is minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. We have 20 minutes for this in total, and there are no supplementaries on this. I have been provided with a list of members who wished to ask questions, but if anyone else wishes to do so, could they please let us know by using the hands up feature if possible. In the meantime, from the list that I've got here, I shall go through these. Could Councillor Stephen Conway ask his question, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask my question either of the leader of the council or the executive member of finance. I would like either of them to assure me and the residents of Twyford and its surrounding villages that money for the new Twyford Library will remain in this year's capital programme.
Stephen, I'll take that. It's John Kaiser. There's been no changes with regards to the allocation of money for the Twyford library at the moment. It's relatively small beer, I hate to say that, but it is. We are looking at some of the larger projects at the moment which may not occur.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. Would Councillor Richard Dolinsky like to ask his question, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've given questions to the leader of the council. I provided him with this question beforehand, so I'm actually hoping for a positive response. In 2012, residents of my ward, in particular residents of Loddon Park, were promised the restoration of a Bailey Bridge across the River Loddon. Potentially, this would have created a greenway linking Woodley to Twyford. The benefits are all too apparent and supports the aspirations of the council to promote alternative methods of travel to reduce congestion and improve our environment. The cost in 2012 had been identified at £200,000. Funding was made available in the form of a £140,000 grant and the rest from developers. At the time, this was widely reported in the media. Can the leader of the council please tell Loddon ward residents what happened to this funding and guarantee now that the Bailey Bridge will be finally restored? Thank you.
Sadly, I can do neither of those today, but I do promise to respond to both of those in the future. It's come as a bit of a surprise to me as a question, so I need to do a bit more research on it, and I'm very sorry. You did give me notice of it, but it hasn't been a sufficient notice to bottom out the questions.
Thank you. Could Councillor Paul Fishwick put his question, please?
Good evening. My question is to the executive member for Highways and Transport, Pauline Jorgensen. Good evening, Pauline. In response to a ward question by my fellow councillor Prue Bray on the 19th September 2019 related to Willis Triangle Railway Station, you said, and I quote, "So I have suggested to Highways that they bid for some money to improve Willis Triangle because its access is not good enough. I am happy to meet with you to see what we can do together to move this forwards. In your response to a resident question from Mike Smith related to Early Railway Station at the annual meeting of this council held on the 16th of June 2020, you said, and I quote, "We are looking at the moment at providing disabled access to Willis Triangle." What are these plans? And while we are pleased you are looking at accessibility at Willis Triangle Station, why have you not contacted the ward councillors as you promised? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Paul. I was waiting for Prue to contact me, and I don't think she has. I have asked officers to look into this, and I haven't yet had the completion of that investigation. You have a supplement?
Will you be coming to us about the information that you have?
I'm afraid, sorry, there are no supplementaries on this.
You can send me an email, Paul. I'm happy to answer.
You would.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, could I now go, please, to Barry Patman? Briefly, please. Councillor Patman. Barry Patman there?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the Leader of the Council whether the changes to the Burfield Emergency Planning Zone has had any effect on the ward that I am in, please.
Thank you, Councillor Patman. We first heard of the changes to the EPAS shortly before Christmas last year, having been previously assured that there would be no changes to the EPAS. We've also been assured by the Atomic Energy Authority that the change to the EPAS was purely technical and not resulting in anything that they were doing in Burfield. So if we take them at their word, then it should have no effect adversely or positively to anybody in the Shinfield ward of Woking. I'm not sure that that's true. Most of all the residents of the affected area and beyond have been advised of the emergency procedures. And I think we'll have to see the extent to which that affects them at all. But at the moment, we are assured that it is purely a technical arrangement and purely a technical process consequence upon being a member of the EU. So that's all I can say at the moment, Councillor Patman. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'd like to get as many questions as we can through in this session, please. So could I go briefly to Sarah Carr and get preparation after that for Councillor Gregor Murray and Guy Grandison? But Sarah Carr for the moment, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This question is for the Exec Member for Environment. Hi, Parry. Under the Council's policy for ongoing maintenance of council-owned trees, under woodland and copses, the first part of the policy states that the council will aim to ensure that each council-owned woodland or wooded area has an up-to-date management plan in place, which will be reviewed on a regular basis. This policy is in line with the Occupiers Liability Acts 1957 and 84. On Tuesday, the 16th of June, during public question time at the annual council meeting, a member of the Friends of Fox Hill group requested a copy of the management plan for the council-owned woodland formerly known as Fox Hill. The management plan, though, still has not been provided. Can the Executive Member for Environment please confirm whether or not a management plan for this woodland actually exists? And if so, please provide me with a copy. And if not, let me know when it will be available, please.
Councillor Bart.
Thank you, Sarah. I think I did intimate that the plan didn't exist in my answer. But what I will do, I will discuss it with my senior officers again to give you an adequate answer for that one.
Thank you. Could I go very briefly, please, to Councillor Guy Grandison, and then after that, Gregor Murray. So Guy Grandison first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways, Pauline Jorgensen. Residents have raised to me concerns of traffic down Beach Lane, including ignoring speed limits and an increasing number of heavy goods vehicles that are causing significant vibrations in properties due to the speed bumps that were put in 30 odd years ago by different councils. What can the council do to mitigate this and enforce the speed limit?
Thank you for your question, Guy. Yeah, I've had emails from residents in Beach Lane about speed humps as well, and it's a difficult problem. We've in the past done surveys down Beach Lane, and anybody who lives near the speed humps doesn't like them because they create a lot of noise, and people who don't live near the speed humps like them because they slow the traffic down. So it's quite a difficult problem to solve. I'll be happy to get officers to look into it. Just to correct what you said slightly. The speed humps were actually put in by the Borough Council or the County Council, one of the two, but they were actually requested, I believe, by early Town Council, although it was when the Libs were in control of it, so I'm not 100% sure of who did it, but it was certainly the Town Council when we weren't in control. But hopefully that answers your question. I'll be happy to look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gregor Murray, briefly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is also to Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. Could you possibly give Council an update in terms of Wokingham Town Centre closure that took place on Friday for Market Day and whether or not it was a success?
Yes, certainly, Gregor. I haven't seen the actual official report of the performance of it from the officers, so I can only go on what I've heard. I had an email from cyclists recently saying they were absolutely delighted with it and it really helped their ability to cycle through the town. I believe the view from some of the motorists is a bit mixed, and I think that's possibly because we're only shutting it for 2 days, and that means that in the days that it's open, people get used to using it, and in the days when it's shut, they then suddenly realise it's shut and they've already got down there. So it's definitely something we should work on and see how we can do something which helps the traders, which the closures does, but also helps the pedestrians and cyclists and keeps the motorists also happy. Interesting balancing act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, in the interest of speed, could I go briefly to Rochelle Shepherd-Dubay and follow that then with Emma Hobbs, please, and Jim Fruin.
Okay. Again, to Pauline, where is the Winnish Park and Ride going to be relocated while it's under construction?
Sorry? Can you?
Winnish Park and Ride will be under construction when it's going to be double-decked. Where is it going to be moved to at that point?
I'm afraid I don't know, Rochelle, but you have reminded me of something that I could have mentioned to your colleague when he asked me a question. One of the options, one of the bits of the plan for Winnish Park and Ride is actually to put a lift in, and that might also help accessibility to the station. I've asked for plans and to see if we can do that, but that could be one solution.
The two proposals were either at the old Park and Ride and or the new Park and Ride at Thames Broken Brow.
Thank you. I didn't know that answer. I'm not sure why you asked me a question, since you obviously
don't know which one it was. I was trying to figure out which one.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I don't know.
Can you email me, please?
Find out for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Next then is Emma Hobbs, please, and then after that Jim Fruin very quickly, and finally, I suspect, if we can fit him in, is Councillor Bill Soane. So it's Emma Hobbs first, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Jorgensen. Can you tell me how the new street cleansing contract is coming along?
Yes, thank you. The reason I've been asked this is because it's operated by Volkers, who are a highways contractor, having moved from the previous contractor. It's been tried out in a couple of bits of early, and it may have been tried out elsewhere in the borough. I certainly know about the early bits around the schools, and I've had some very, very good feedback. I've seen some excellent pictures of the quality of their cleaning, and I hope they keep it up when they do the rest of the borough to the same standard.
Thank you very much.
Could you go across to Councillor Jim Furman, please, next briefly? Thank you.
Sorry, Pauline, for you again. The member for Highways and the Highways team should be congratulated for the very sensible decision of bringing forward a number of resurfacing projects during the lockdown period. Really good idea. Some of the work in my ward is excellent. There are a couple of cases where the quality is questionable. Like Fairmead Road is already developing potholes after just a few weeks of being resurfaced, and residents of Elizabeth Rout Close tell me they have a new water feature, which they describe as a small lake every time that it rains, which has never happened before. Will you kindly visit these sites with me and provide reassurance to the residents who have raised these issues that we do monitor quality and value for money?
Yes, of course, Jim. I'd be happy to visit, although you invite me rather than me trying to invite you. Yeah, if that would help. If that would help me. Certainly, I believe that the highways repairs that are done are warranted for a couple of years. So if there is an issue, they should be out to fix them, and it shouldn't cost residents or the taxpayer any money. Most repairs are good. Some of them are not good. And they should repair the issues if they're faulty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Change of plan. Could I go next, please, very briefly to Imogen Shepherd-Dubay?
Hi there, Malcolm. Thank you. My question is I've got residents in my ward who are unable to access Wokingham Town Centre because of the removal of the blue badge parking bays. We've got the bays have been removed from Broad Street and from Rose Street, and the one on Peach Street is being largely used by lorries unloading. And of course, when Denmark Street closed, that removed most of the remaining ones that are left. And it's quite difficult for distance limited people who cannot walk very far to use Wokingham Town Centre at the moment. Can I ask, what was there a quality impact assessment, and what measures are being put in place so these people can still use Wokingham Town Centre?
Thank you, Imogen. Yes, there was an impact assessment. I have got an answer in my email here from Andy Glencross about where the alternative spaces are. And we can't find it at the moment, so I will update you when I do my exec member speech, if that's okay.
Sure. They were answering the question. Right. Following that one, we now go across to Councillor Bill Soane, please. And then what is likely to be the last one will be Gary Cowan afterwards. But Councillor Bill Soane first, please.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Pauline, it's another one for you. Coleman's Road in Woodley is a bus route, and since the opening of the pathways through to Dinton Pastures, which is also the new cycleway, there's been this considerable increase in parking along there. And this causes congestion when buses are coming down. People can't, it's only allows single way. It's also creating problems for residents. If I can show you, I don't know whether you can see, I have a list of residents who've signed a petition asking that something be done to restrict parking along that section of Coleman's Road. Is there anything that likely can be done?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm very happy to ask officers to look into it for you, Bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, that was very quick. So we go very quickly then to Councillor Gary Cowan, please.
Thank you, Malcolm. My question is to Pauline. It has actually been answered, so there's no problem there. But I would like her if she could send me the email on the disabled parking in the town centre. That's all.
I'm very happy to send it to you if I can find it before I have to give my exec speech.
Thanks.
Right, I think we've just about. Councillor Parry Barr, we might be able to squeeze a quick one in from you if you're able. You have a question?
That's very kind of you, Mr. Mayor. In my ward, Falcon Avenue is a very long road with a nasty bend in the middle, and there are only 2 street lights, one at either end, and there are some elderly people in the middle in particular that find it very difficult in the dark, particularly winter nights, darkness. And I did ask the executive member for highways some time ago, and Andy Glencross has looked at the issue, but nothing's happening on that one. Please, if I can ask Pauline, the exec member for highways, to please give Andy your support to put another light in the middle.
Certainly will, Parry. Hopefully there'll be light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. That's we've managed to get quite a few questions there. I think all the ones on my list and a couple of others. So that's the end of 28. So we now move to agenda item 29, which is statements by the leader and executive members and deputy executive members. Again, we have 20 minutes on this, so we would like, if possible, to get through them.
Mr. Mayor, could I please make a point?
Indeed.
Would it be possible, as we have not been able to get to the motions that are on the agenda, some of them being there since last September, that we could miss items 29 and 30, and the statements that are going to be made by the leader and the executive members, and the statements about council-owned companies, could they be sent to members by email tomorrow so that we can move on to the motions now?
Well, I'm reluctant to take items out of the agenda on the hoof, so to speak, but I could ask them, please, to do what we did on the previous item, which is to be very brief. And so if we do go to item 29, then I'll go through this very quickly. Councillor Halsall, could you all do something like 1 minute each rather than the longer ones? Get as much as we can through. So, Councillor Halsall.
Bye. The senseless stabbings in Forbury Gardens underline the fragility of life, one of whom was a very popular Holt teacher, James Furlow. It's difficult to find words to console in such dreadful circumstances. It is impossible to understand the motive for such actions. Thank God for our emergency services. James was the wonderfully talented and inspirational head of history, government and politics at the Holt School, Wokingham. James was a very kind and gentle man. He had a real sense of duty and cared for every one of our students. He truly inspired everyone he taught through his passion for his subject and his dedication. He was determined that our students would develop a critical awareness of global issues, and in doing so become active citizens and have a voice. It is also very sad that James Box suddenly died last Monday night. He represented Westcote on Wokingham Town Council. My heart goes out to his wife and children. I thank God we have been spared the worst of the virus, and it seems now to be at bay. Thanks also to you for helping your neighbours and heeding government advice. Thanks to the officers and volunteers who have been so dedicated, flexible and hardworking. We are very lucky to live in such a very great community. However, the coronavirus is still with us. It has the capability of killing. There is no vaccine, so please resist the temptation to believe that it is over. Stay distant from one another and stay at home as much as possible. The Borough Council is honing its outbreak plans, which include prevention, effective tracking and tracing, and outbreak management plans. We'll be continuing with our measures to protect the vulnerable for corona, but at the same time progress recovery without creating a need for the next extra resources, conscious of the need to balance the budget. The staff have shown their flexibility and willingness to work with this envelope. I ask all members to be cognizant of this, not to create unessential demand, and to work through executive members. Using our resources wisely will save lives. Your council is dedicated to delivering the best services and support that we can give to our residents. Within the borough, we are anti-racist, promote equality and celebrate diversity. We can and will do better on each. stay alert and stay safe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. We move very quickly on, please, to Councillor Ullacorin Clark. If you'd like to speak.
No.
Sorry?
Councillor Kaiser.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. So, Councillor Kaiser then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Financially, councils across the UK have been badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and in fact some councils would be considered to be in the unenviable position of declaring bankruptcy or very close to it. Fortunately, Wokingham are not in that position, as even as the lowest funded unitary authority, and years of careful management by Conservative administration officers means our reserves are somewhat better than most, being rated 10th highest unity council in the country. That said, most of the councillors here will also be aware we've also incurred expenditure and loss of income that already exceeds the government funding we have received, so far to the tune of £6 million, which will be needed to be funded from our reserves. This is of course an estimate of what we already are aware of, and the impact could be worse. We are still assessing the likely cost of the pandemic, and even with the government support, the council will have to call upon its reserves to a sustainable degree. How sustainable will depend on the outcome, of which nobody can predict with any accuracy at the moment. With the increase in costs every week and the borough taking on additional responsibility, such as track and trace, the policing of social distancing, and the ensuring operating businesses follow the government guidelines, all this makes it even more difficult. Interestingly, our reserves prior to the pandemic stood at less than 1 month's council tax. Even as I said, our level of reserves are considered prudent and more than adequate in relation to other councils of our size and level of responsibility. It does not take long with this current level of cost to exhaust these resources. One stark statistic is the council was responsible for the care of some 1,800 people. This has ballooned to over 5,000. The council is currently working on a recovery plan as we come out of lockdown, which will mean assessing the situation. The recovery plan is to also look to rebuild the reserves over a number of years and to ensure the council is financially sound, prepared to meet the challenges of increasing demand and cost going forward. On the matter of reserves, they're a bit like the fire extinguisher. You use them when your house is on fire, and that's, I can tell you at the moment, our house is currently burning. These are tough, sad and emotional times. It is the residents' money, and along with government grants we have received, it is there to support the community, which we have all done in a very controlled and accountable way. We have used the money to support residents in their time of need. Working as a team, we will pull through this, and all the things parish, towns and borough councils done to support the residents and the action of the voluntary sector have helped to minimise the impact, especially for the most vulnerable in our community. But the fight continues. We are not out of the woods yet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Very quickly, we will move on then to Councillor Charles Margetts for his presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pick up a couple of points which were touched upon earlier. We talked about the Pillar 2, basically test tracing results being released last Friday. I just wanted to reassure members to pick up on what I said earlier, that how unhappy we are basically being continually blindsided by Public Health England. We have raised these comments most firmly with our local MPs and complained strongly about this. If they want us to take responsibility for managing COVID-19 locally, we have to have the correct information. Otherwise, I just wanted to briefly refer members to the council-wide track and trace and COVID management plan, which was released in public last week. 114 pages. It covers every single outcome that will happen, basically, when we get further COVID cases in the community and how they will be managed. And I would say if anybody has any concerns, questions, comments on that, please email me directly. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Margetts. Move on quickly now to Councillor Gregor Murray, please.
No. PJ.
Okay. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen then. We're doing it in a different order to what I had written down, but okay.
I thought it was me after Charles.
Can I get
rather than spend the time arguing about it, can I get on with it? I want to particularly answer the question I was asked earlier. That now that I've actually got the email, I've got some information about the disabled parking bays in Wokingham. Broad Street, there was one disabled parking bay removed, unavailable due to COVID-19, and we're currently looking at whether we can tweak measures to re-provide that space. In Rose Street, there were 3 spaces removed, but there are sufficient blue badge parking spaces in the car park immediately adjacent to Rose Street. And in addition, the Rose Street spaces associated with the Methodist Church, which is currently closed for services, are available. In Peach Street, there were no spaces removed and all 3 bays are available. In Denmark Street, there were no spaces removed and all 4 bays are available. In addition, blue badge holders are able to park on single and double yellow lines for up to 3 hours, provided they don't obstruct the flow of traffic. For example, in that instance, there is space for 4 to 6 vehicles on double yellow lines on Rose Street. I won't bother with the rest of the statement to allow everybody else in.
Thank you. We move next then quickly to Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, in the interests of saving a little bit of time,
yes,
pull the statement from council-owned companies.
Okay,
so
fine.
But Ulrich and Gregor, and then you can go to the motions, if you'll be so kind.
We'll go to Councillor Murray next then. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John.
Who is it now? Is it me or Gregor?
Ulrich.
It's me. Okay,
Hello.
thank you. Children's Services response to COVID-19
I think
restrictions.
both Andy Troy and I would like to get in, Mr. Mayor. I don't mind which of us goes first.
I think we're going to say the same thing. It's just I'd like to introduce a motion without notice under 4.2.12 to adjourn, not to adjourn the meeting, to extend the time in the meeting beyond 10:30 in accordance with Rule 4.2.8.
And I was going to propose the same thing, so I'd like to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Prue.
Yes, it's been proposed by Andy Croy and seconded by Councillor Prubray that we extend the meeting by an extra 30 minutes, and we'll conclude at 10:30. Yes, and we'll conclude at 10:30. Sorry, it's gone 10:30. The meeting will continue to 11 p.m. rather than 10:30, and we need to take a vote on that. I just need to check.
Could my 4 members ask for a recorded vote? We only have 4.
That's perfectly valid.
So,
yes.
So
I'm sure.
Please.
I would join them for the recorded vote. Is there anybody else doing
We'll
number
join
6?
them. I'll join them. I'll join them.
So will I.
If you need a recorded vote, we need 6 people.
Yes, I'll join them.
6.
I've joined them.
I'm joining. We've got more than 6.
You've got the 6 hands up, so we can know who they are, please.
Okay.
Okay. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. We've got 6 people asking for a vote as well. We need to take a vote on whether we continue for this additional time. And that, I think, is done.
Right, I'm going to read out the names now. So, Keith Baker.
Against.
Parry Bath.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Keith's voice has changed.
Unbelievable.
Parry Bath.
Against.
Rachel Bishopforth. Did you get that?
Have you muted, Rachel? She said 4.
Thank you. Laura Blumenthal.
Against.
Chris Bowring.
Against.
Shirley Boyd.
4.
Prue Bray.
4, and I think it's amazing that you vote against, given you told us not to ask questions to get to the motions.
Rachel Burgess.
4.
Jenny Cheng. Jenny Cheng.
Sorry, against.
Ulrika Clark.
Against.
Stephen Conway.
very much for and very disgusted at the votes on the other side.
Gary Cowan.
For, and I would echo Stephen's comments as well.
Andy Croy.
For, we have business from September to settle.
Richard Dlinsky.
For.
Carl Duran.
As a Democrat, for.
Lindsay Ferris.
For, they're obviously rushing to get home.
Michael Firminger.
Against.
Paul Fishwick.
For.
Jim Fruin.
For.
Maria G.
For.
Guy Granderson. Guy Granderson. Charlotte Haytham Taylor.
Against.
John Halsall.
Against.
David Hare.
For, I can't understand it.
Emma Hobbs.
Against.
Graham Howe.
Against.
Clive Jones.
For. Disgraceful behaviour from the Conservatives.
Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
John Kaiser.
Against.
Sarah Kerr.
For. Disgusting behaviour.
Diane King.
Against.
Abdul Loys.
Against.
Tahir Maher.
For, disappointed.
Charles Magetz.
Against.
Adrian Mather.
This is a complete failure of democracy. For.
Ken Mile.
Against.
Andrew Mickelberg.
For and bitterly disappointed.
Stuart Monroe.
Against.
Gregor Murray.
Against.
Barry Patman.
Against.
Malcolm Richards.
As Mayor, I abstain.
Angus Ross. Daniel Sargent.
Against.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For, and what are you all rushing to on this evening? I mean, it's not like anybody's going anywhere.
Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For. Are we going to have a birthday party for the Heathrow motion since it'll be a year old in September if we don't get to it next month, the rest of this month?
If you stop, we can get
Caroline Smith. Chris Smith.
I'm utterly appalled by the time wasting of the Lib Dems tonight. Against.
Wayne Smith.
Yeah. Against.
What about your own time wasting?
Bill Soane.
Against.
Alison Swaddle.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a point of order that members have only been asked to vote, and these comments that just show disrespect to the Mayor and the meeting. Susan, I'm voting against.
I'm
Simon
afraid you don't deserve any respect.
Simon Weeks.
Against.
Oliver Whittle.
Against.
This is Councillor G. May I ask a question? Can you ask you what you recorded for Guy Granderson, please?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Apologies, my internet decided to completely destroy itself during that process. I vote against.
Thank you.
The same was for Caroline Smith, because I didn't hear her speak then. Did she have a problem?
No, I said for. Did you hear that? Hello?
Not at the time.
Yes. Sorry, I thought I was heard, but yeah, for.
The decision, therefore, is that the meeting will not be extended and will conclude at 10:30 p.m.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I reiterate Alison's point of order and ask the officers to rule on whether it's acceptable to have comments during a recorded vote?
I will seek advice on that. I'll be back to you shortly.
Bureau, you shouldn't say anything except for or against.
Okay, I've just been checking the situation. There is nothing that says you cannot say something alongside it, Mark, as long as it's not a long conversation, clearly. But there is nothing to stop you saying it.
Thank you. I'll bear that in mind in future.
Thank you. And so it has already been decided, hasn't it, that we finished the statements by the leader. We've had a vote on the extension, which is not allowed. And then we've already decided not to do the statements from council-owned companies. So we move now on to the next item, which is 31. And that's the process for motion 421, the climate issues one. This is the one that at a previous meeting was started, but ran out of time and had to be adjourned. It only had 12 minutes at the original run, so we've got 18 minutes of it left for this particular motion. We therefore pick up where it stopped and go over to you, Councillor Andy Croy. Would you like to speak for up to 3 minutes on it to restart this debate?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor Wood, and I'll keep it very, very quick. The third runway at Heathrow will fuel increased economic growth in the Thames Valley. Because of increased economic growth, the third runway will fuel the demand for more places to live in the borough. Because of, I'm not talking about the next 10 years, I'm talking about the next 30 or 40 or 50 years, the next 100 years. Graiseley Newtown will not have been completed before they come for Swallowfield or Finch Hampstead or the rest of Shinfield. All of our countryside is at risk. All of our villages will disappear if we continue with the rates of economic growth we have had over the past 30 years. Use this vote to send a message. Send a message to government and send a message to the executive. All our future submissions to any consultation must make it clear. Enough is enough. Say no to a third runway at Heathrow. Put your economic growth elsewhere. Put your houses elsewhere. Put your runway elsewhere. Be strong, members. Stand up for your communities. Go back to your residents and tell them, I voted to protect our borough. Tell them I voted against the third runway at Heathrow.
Thank you, Councillor Croy. Does anyone else wish to speak on this issue?
I do, Sarah Kerr.
I do, Gregor Murray.
All right.
I do, Rachel Burgess.
Okay, a whole selection of you. As it's a climate-related one, I think I might go to Councillor Gregor Murray first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in light of our declared climate emergency and the implications that this is having on all of our policies, I've asked for an amendment to be made to this motion, which comes with the full support of my group. The amendment reads, and I'll ask for it to be put up on the screen for everybody, this council does not support the expansion of any airport unless it can be proven to be carbon neutral.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a seconder for that?
Point of order.
Oh, sorry.
Can I check with Democratic Services as to whether that amendment is valid, because it's quite a big difference to what is written there. So can I have confirmation from Democratic Services to confirm whether that motion amendment is valid?
Okay, if you hold a moment, then I will mute and... Yes, I've checked and it is quite valid, so it's okay to continue.
How can an amendment completely remove the whole measure thing where we're talking about expansion of Heathrow Airport? An amendment which deletes any reference to Heathrow would, in our opinion, negate the original motion. So
well, it's not 180.
Clarification.
Yes, okay. I'll seek advice on that. In fact, it is permitted to continue because it doesn't negate completely. It refers to Heathrow and any airport. and it's not an 180-degree opposite because it has the word unless in there, which basically means it could be permitted under those circumstances, even of course if they're very, very difficult. So it is permitted to have that amendment from Councillor Murray. Do you have a seconder for it, Councillor Murray?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. Laura Blumenthal will be seconding this motion, and I would like to speak on it as well, please.
Okay. Would you, well, Councillor Blumenthal, would you like...
Does the proposer of the motion, which is Paul Fishwick, not get a chance to say whether he just accepts the amendment, Mr. Chairman?
It was Ian Pittock who was the proposer of the motion, not Paul Fishwick, and Ian Pittock is no longer a councillor.
But he had written to Anne Hunter before the last March council meeting. This is to be able to hand the motion over to Paul Fishwick.
Paul Fishwick was the seconder, so he inherits the motion.
Right, I've sought advice on this, and after we've identified Councillor Murray and Councillor Blumenthal, I need to ask Councillor Fishwick if he will accept the amendment. Councillor Fishwick, are you there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will accept the motion amendment. Thank you.
Amendment. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you. Councillor Fishwick has accepted the amendment. It becomes the substantive motion, and the following process is now involved. I need to ask if anyone else wishes to speak on this.
I do, Sarah Kerr.
All right. Is anyone else?
I still do.
Yes, I've had my hand up.
Okay. All right. So we have on the list here, well, Gregor Murray needs to speak, and we'll work the way through. So, Councillor Murray, would you like to speak first, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Gatwick Airport achieved carbon neutral status in 2017. It uses 100% renewable energy in its power supply, includes an on-site waste generation facility that turns organic and non-organic waste into energy to power Tesla charging stations, sends zero waste to landfill, and brings 55% of its workforce to work each day via alternative modes of transport. Gatwick is one of 97 carbon neutral airports across the world, according to the 4-level standards of the Airport Carbon Accreditation Organisation. In the UK, their list includes not only Gatwick, but also Cornwall Newquay Airport, London Luton, London City, London Stansted, Manchester and Farnborough. Globally, the list includes some of the world's busiest airports, including Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, Kuala Lumpur, LAX, JFK, Newark, Schiphol, Rome, Turin, Nice and Brussels. If these airports wish to expand, Mr. Mayor, if their expansion could be proven to maintain their carbon neutrality, then should we oppose them? I would argue no, as their expansion would have no detrimental impact on our climate emergency, on our target of reaching carbon neutrality ourselves by 2030, or on the UK's ambition of being carbon neutral by 2050. Mr. Mayor, expanding any airport comes with consequences to our physical environment. So, from a climate perspective, why would we single out Heathrow to oppose? Surely, if we oppose the expansion of one airport on environmental terms, then we should oppose the expansion of all airports, not just in the UK, but globally, on the same basis. Surely, if we oppose the expansion of an airport for environmental reasons, it is irrelevant if it is 25 miles away, or 250 miles away, or 2,500 miles away. On that basis, if it can't be proven to be carbon neutral, surely we should oppose the expansion of all airports, not just the one closest to our door. Mr. Mayor, this amended motion would mean that while the expansion of any airport cannot be both demonstrated and accepted by the by our carbon neutrality or by the Airport Carbon Accreditation Organisation, our council would stand opposed to that expansion. But for airports that are carbon neutral, for those that can prove that their expansion will have no detrimental impact on our climate emergency, achieving our carbon neutral aim or achieving the nation's carbon objective, then it has our conditional support. I urge all members to join the Conservative group in backing this amended motion.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Could I ask briefly for Laura sorry, Laura Blumenthal to speak next, and then after that, if we have enough time, we'll go to Sarah Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we can get both in.
We know that the aviation industry has been one of the hardest hit financially by COVID-19. Heathrow has said that up to 25,000 people's jobs at the airport are at risk, and British Airways plans to cut up to 12,000 roles. The knock-on effect to other livelihoods will undoubtedly be large, and many of these people live in Woking Borough. There are residents, and they and their families will be worried about losing their job at Heathrow and not knowing where their next one will be. They will not want us adding our voice to blocking Heathrow development when the full picture of its environmental sustainability is not yet known. We shouldn't act without knowing all the facts. What we do know is that Heathrow Airport says it's committed to being net zero carbon by the mid-2030s, and that it's already reduced its carbon emissions within its infrastructure by 93% since 1990. UK passenger numbers have increased by 25% since 2005, but during this time, carbon emissions have decreased by 3%, showing that more people flying doesn't automatically mean carbon growth. The airport is already running off 100% renewable electric and is investing in electric flight, including working with the University of Reading to research future infrastructure needs for electric aircraft. We know that Heathrow Airport is a large employer, including to this borough's residents, and we need it to thrive and expand if it can do so sustainably. At present, we do not know that it cannot. Heathrow is heavily focused on investing in green solutions, and after the Court of Appeal ruling in February on the expansion, the Supreme Court has accepted Heathrow's application to appeal it. There is no date set for the hearing, so there is not a straightforward path to expansion and what this may mean for the environment. It is far too early for us to judge. I second this amendment for it's a sensible choice. It'd be daft for us to say we're against the airport's expansion under any circumstance. Indeed, a lot of our residents employed by Heathrow may not be very happy with us, without us first knowing whether it can expand sustainably. We simply do not have enough information yet. I recommend the amended motion to this council.
Thank you, Councillor. We'd like to get this in fairly quickly. Could Sarah Carr...
Mr Mayor, I'm sorry to Councillor Bowering here. May I call for a recorded vote if we get to a vote? I hope we do.
Certainly, we do.
Thank you.
Right.
I need 6 of my friends to support me.
No, it's already been requested.
Oh, has it? I beg pardon.
It is supported. Fine. Sarah Carr, if you could speak fairly briefly, because then we need to allow Councillor Fishwick the right of reply. No, maybe.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. My main concern with the amendment is that you can only prove something after the event. You can only model for it before. So my concern is that we get it built and then we find out later that actually carbon neutrality can't be met. Just to be clear as well, it's already been demonstrated that by increasing Heathrow capacity would actually mean 17 million fewer passengers at regional airports. And what that means is you're actually putting more traffic onto the roads. They have only said that they would work with stakeholders to influence the delivery of the Western and Southern Rail links, and then state in the same paragraph that they will build the world's largest car park for 50,000 vehicles. There is absolutely no way you can expand Heathrow and be carbon neutral. So, but there you go. I'll hand over to Paul now.
Can you speak?
To do a right reply before we have to go to the vote.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to speak?
Yes, please. Very quickly, because we need to go to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 8 grandchildren, aged between 11 and 1 years old. In little under 10 years' time, when they asked me, Grandad, what did you do to stop climate change and the air pollution that's killing us all? And I'll follow and focus on just Heathrow, which has the biggest impact on this area. Other airports don't. I want to be able to say that I, along with my fellow councillors at Woking Borough Council, objected to expanded Heathrow Airport with its planned 3rd runway, because an expanded Heathrow will only give us increased air pollution from additional flights, increased pollution from additional road transport, lack of any guaranteed delivery programme for the Western Rail Link and the Southern Rail access, increased noise from up to 260,000 more flight movements per annum.
Can I cut across you, please, Councillor Fishwick, because we need to go to the vote. We're up on time. We need to go to the vote now. And you've had the minute, so can we do the vote? Thank you. And it is a recorded vote. So you will be voting for the amended motion because it has been accepted by the original motion. So you are voting for the amended vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Keith Baker.
4.
Parry Bath.
4.
Rachel Bishop Firth.
4.
Laura Blumenthal.
4.
Chris Bowring.
4.
Shirley Boyt.
Against.
Prue Bray.
Reluctantly 4.
Rachel Burgess.
Against.
Jenny Cheng.
4.
Ulla Crin Clark.
4.
Stephen Conway.
4.
Gary Cowan. Gary Cowan. And Andy Croy.
Against.
Richard Delinsky.
4.
Carl Duran.
Proudly against.
Lindsay Ferris. Lindsay Ferris.
4.
Michael Firmager.
4, please.
Paul Fishwick.
4.
Jim Fruin.
4.
Maria G.
4.
Guy Granderson.
4.
Charlotte Haytham Taylor.
4.
John Halsall.
4.
David Hare.
4, I suppose.
Emma Hobbs.
4.
Graham Howe.
4, without rude comment.
Clive Jones. Clive Jones.
4.
Pauline Jorgensen. John Kaiser. John Kaiser.
4.
Sarah Kerr.
Abstain.
Diane King.
4.
Abdul Loys.
4.
Tahir Maher.
4.
Charles Magetz.
4.
Adrian Mather.
Abstain.
Ken Mile.
4.
And Andrew Mickelber.
Reluctantly 4.
Stuart Monroe.
4.
Gregory Murray.
4.
Barry Patman.
4.
Malcolm Richards.
As Mayor, I abstain.
Angus Ross. Daniel Sargent.
4.
Imogen Shepherd DeBay.
4.
Rochelle Shepherd DeBay.
4 reluctantly because we can't actually prove it will actually work.
Caroline Smith.
4.
Chris Smith.
4.
Wayne Smith.
4.
Bill Soane.
4.
Alison Swaddle. Alison Swaddle.
4.
Simon Weeks. Simon Weeks.
4.
Oliver Whittle.
4.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. And in light of the time and the decision earlier, this would therefore appear to be the end of the meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.